You're gonna have pretty light.
It's pretty delayed, but in the left-hand corner, y'all, there's a text box down there. That's where you ask questions. So
this is a demonstration of Wirecast.
We're gonna see who's on with us here. Otherwise, we're just gonna riff. Started streaming 11 minutes ago. Great. So sorry for the delay. Let's just get right into it for people that they're going to have to join us. And this weird thing keeps coming up on the screen. I'm not sure how to get rid of that. The weird Wirecast logo that throbs in and out of the image. I will do my best to make that go away while while Dan is answering a question or talking
of Wirecast
about some of this stuff. Dan, maybe you can do an introduction. I know some of the people that were on previously have heard my introduction. I lived here for about 3 years, just quickly. My name is Aaron Murphy. Hello, and if you're watching this on replay, thanks for checking it out. Dan?
I'm Dan Derica, and I've lived here for over 9 years, and I do agriculture here. I've built my own house that I live in, a straw bale house, and also own a rental property called Wisteria Lodge that I lived in when I first came here. And I do like a YouTube channel, my own YouTube channel called Hardcore Sustainable, that's sort of about you know, the life of somebody who lives at Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage, and talk about all sorts of interesting things. So you can check that out on YouTube if you want to, Hardcore Sustainable. And subscribe to that channel if you want to. What else? I have a vineyard here. One of the things that I wanted to do when I first came to Dancing Rabbit was to have access to land and start a vineyard. And I thought a vineyard would be appropriate for our land since it's highly erodible. We have like a lot of hilly land here.
We do.
And so like a perennial crop means that you don't have to till the land all the time. And it's also something that, you know, we drink alcohol here, and
a demonstration of Wirecast.
It's a local source of alcohol. So I've been working on that project as a potential source of income. It's had its ups and downs. It's really hard to grow grapes organically in this part of the country. But I do a lot of other stuff here. Do some permaculture on my warren, which is what we call our lots, where we have our houses and basically our yards. We just call them warrens. So try to grow as much of my own food as I can.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
We just started a project this year, a growers co-op, because we haven't had a lot of agriculture happening here in the past other than my vineyard project, and now the critters have some livestock. The critters are a group of people that live here and cooperate to raise livestock. But anyways, we started this growers co-op, and we're trying to grow our own food, as much of it as we can. We're starting, it's sort of a pilot project this year, so we're growing 5 different crops, and it's going okay.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Not as stellar as I would have hoped for, but we've had a pretty good season. And we've gotten our first crop of summer squash, and there's a lot of winter squash out there that's on the vine. We're growing crops, intercropping in between the rows of grapes in my vineyard. So it's kind of an interesting setup. It's a way to use the land to be more productive. Most vineyards would just put grass and mow the grass in between their rows of grapes, but I'm making use of that space and growing more food. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
I had one from before that basically, how would you describe, someone was curious about the housing situation here. How would you describe the housing situation at Dancing Rabbit and how it's different even from, you know, suburbia? Like not just, you know, specifics, but kind of in the broad sense. How is living here in a house different?
This is a demonstration
well, the houses
of
are a lot
Wirecast.
smaller, for one thing, than in suburbia. Like, you know, houses have been, I think they're like, you know, a couple times to a few times bigger than they were like in the 50s. So Americans have just, their houses, their needs for space have grown dramatically. And although there is the tiny house movement that is maybe having some effect on the size of houses. But here we pretty much all have tiny houses, and here we don't
This
put
is
a
a
lot of the things in
demonstration
our
of
houses that
Wirecast.
other people would think are, you know, required in a house, like a bathroom or a shower. Often houses will not have those features, and we'll just share them. We have a common house that has shower facilities and has bathrooms, and I do have a humanure stall in my house. So I do have a bathroom option in my house because I don't want to have to run, in an emergency or crisis. I don't want to have to run all the way to
This
the
is a
common house,
demonstration of
even though I'm pretty close
Wirecast.
to it. But it's just kind of nice to have it right there. And it doesn't take up space. It's actually right under my stairway, so it's like this little cubby space that's wouldn't otherwise be used, and it's a nice use of space in my tiny house. But I do use the showers in the common house, and I do have a kitchen in my house, but some people don't have kitchens, and they just share kitchens and use them collectively. So I'd say those are major parts that are different.
This is a
We don't have
demonstration
lawns
of
here, so we're not
Wirecast.
manicuring lawns, but people do have yards that they maintain. I have a lot of flowers in my yard, perennial flowers, and some annuals, just because I think flowers are important too. They might seem unnecessary and like some extra luxury, but I think they just brighten up your life and add so much to your experience throughout the season to see flowers, colorful flowers.
This is a demonstration.
Well, and also you talk
of
about
Wirecast.
pollinators too.
Yeah, exactly.
Bees and all the various insects that help us pollinate our food, and the trees and all of the other inedible flowering plants that we rely on to support the ecosphere, right?
Yeah, I was just the other day. I was looking at all of the there was a hummingbird that was coming around pollinating my flowers in my flower garden.
Cool.
There's just bumblebee bees going crazy, and earlier in the season, just honeybees.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
All around certain varieties of flowers. So yeah, it's providing food, and some of those other pollinators are struggling because there's not enough nectar out there for them to feed on. So it's good to have that as well. Yeah.
Cool. One of the questions that comes up is, how, Dan, do you make the economics in the village work for you?
Well, it's always been a struggle, and
This
it's always
is a
something that
demonstration
I
of Wirecast.
have in the back of my head. It's stressful to live here, and it's pretty cheap to live here. I think it's relatively inexpensive, but it's interesting how, though, when we're living with such a small income, you're living with such a low income, I still eat almost all organic produce. I invest in solar panels. And I know plenty of people who are have professional jobs, and they're making lots of money,
Wirecast.
and they feel like they can't afford to invest in renewable energy. But we do it here, and we're most of us live in poverty. So it's we live simply, but we put priority on the things that are important, and so I think that's part of it. But yeah, the economics. My original intention, like I said, was to have a vineyard and a winery potentially, and we'll see how that goes. It's been a long time now that I've had the vineyard going for 8 years, and it's been a struggle. It's a learning experience, and it's also experimentation. It's something that's not really done anywhere in this part of the country. So it's a lot of experimentation and failure and learning how to do things better. But in the meantime, I've been selling vegetables and doing whatever I can to make ends meet. And recently I did get an online job, and so I've been doing that. It's kind of nice to have that source of income because it takes a little bit of the stress out of trying to figure out what I'm doing for income here. It's not a job that I feel good about, and I talk about how I used to live in Madison, Wisconsin, and wasn't living the life entirely that I wanted to live. I wanted to live more sustainably. I wanted to get all my power from renewable energy and cooperate with other people in sharing resources. And but the job that I had in Madison, I was really happy with, and it was like a
This
job
is a
from the heart kind
demonstration
of
of
thing. And then I
Wirecast.
come here and I'm trying to set that up, but we have a struggling economy. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're not close to any, if you want to have a business that's selling a product or something, you're going to have to ship it far and wide because there is no sympathetic market in our area, and transportation can be expensive, So we haven't figured that out. I think it's just we have to look at what the limitations are of where we are and figure out what kinds of businesses would work. And some people do have figured that out. Like the midwives have a really good business here.
For sure. Yeah, I think there are some people that live very comfortably here, and there's a whole other group of people who struggle a bit, to make it work. Because while it is really affordable, yeah, just the typical job doesn't really work, which, like, for my partner, Rae and I, who, if you've joined us on previous sessions of Ask a Rabbit, she and I have kind of really turned our whole lives inside and out and trained to have new careers, specifically so we can stay here and work here. And it's taken a lot of energy and, quite honestly, quite a bit of money, most of that in time, to make it work, to make the sacrifice to be able to live like this means that we're living here not reliant on a vehicle, mostly, to make our income. So I think that's probably the most difficult thing for people that are living here, maybe that are just coming from a let's say a traditional job in a sort of city setting. Maybe one of the things that they struggle with, and because it really, for me, it meant that I really had to kind of reevaluate every aspect of my life in order to sort of make some of the economics of it work. I mean, I also am very lucky that I have a job that I do that I get calls for pretty regularly to go away and earn money away on different projects around the country. So, I can go and do one of those, but not a lot of people necessarily have that.
This is a demonstration of
Wirecast. It takes a tenacious character and someone who's got the ability to learn new skills, I think, to make living here work.
Yeah, definitely. You have to be creative. And it seems like what you've been doing, you're trying all different sorts of things. And like, one of those things has got to click at least, you have to try different things. And, but I was doing this video work earlier, and had interviewed Jack Walter, who used to live at Red Earth Farms, and I was thinking about his business, which is raising livestock and sustainably grazing livestock over there. And just thinking of the life that he was living, I would say he would not be able to do that here because he could not have the same access to a vehicle.
Yeah, it's true. That's why he had to move next door.
And, exactly. Like him being able to have a truck that he can use whenever he wants to or whatever. And I know he went far and wide to get equipment and all that stuff. And it's like, you have to think about that. And most businesses are, so dependent on cheap fossil fuel and on having a car or transportation of some sort. It's just kind of required. And when you're trying to set up a business with people who have that option and you don't, it adds another another barrier that you have to think around. And I think in the future, if we get pretty organized and have some good businesses set up here, we can set up some kind of cooperative trucking effort to be really creative about it,
Yeah. I think the transportation thing is something that's really come to light recently. A lot having to do with some of the limitations of having an all-electric vehicle. We're really running up against kind of the shortcomings of an all-electric, battery-powered, solar-energized car whose range is diminished in the wintertime when the batteries are colder. And also the output, presumably, well, I guess not so much the supply of electricity, because we're always making an abundance of electricity here, because generally we are backfeeding more electricity into the grid in the daytime than we use. So we are a net exporter, just barely, of electricity to local farms and stuff. But I think you're right. I think the transportation thing, especially recently, has been something that I think there's going to be some big changes afoot, I think, in the next year here, because
This is a
a lot of
demonstration of
people, I feel like, are
Wirecast.
starting to realize the impact, and just the fact that it limits a certain type of person from moving here. And we're really open to, the village expanding. We really want to have the village grow to 500 or 1,000 people. It's an experiment to see if we can live sustainably, create the infrastructure, manage ourselves, manage our conflict, produce a lot of the goods and services that we otherwise rely on in the outside world, learn how to make a lot of our own decisions and organize ourselves, take care of our own waste in ways that don't rely on outside systems. And so we're open to having people join us and check out what we're doing here at the village. And on that note, I actually wanted to ask people if they'd be willing to go onto the YouTube channel for this stream and ask us questions. I'm going to check on Facebook here to see if anybody's asking any questions. But if you can either do it from Facebook or you can do it from the YouTube page. If you click through on Facebook to the YouTube channel that this is streaming on, there's a chat box right down there. Otherwise, I've got some other questions that are kind of prepared from earlier until I get some live questions from folks. Thanks again for joining us. We're really curious to find out more about you. As we move forward with this, I'd love to hear from y'all, and even if you're willing, anybody who's on the stream or watches this, if you can put your, try to private message us either through Facebook or through YouTube. My email is amurphy1, spelled out O-N-E, at gmail.com. Email me any questions you have. We can bring up things next week. And because we also want to hear about you. We want to hear why you're even on here, what sort of things draw you to wanting to find out more about Dancing Rabbit. So on that note, one of the related questions to the transportation thing, but the economics thing, who do you think, Dan, really thrives here? Like, what is the circumstances? I know, just generally speaking, but can you describe someone who does particularly well living in this village?
Well, in terms of what? Like, well, in terms of...
So I'm leaving that open to your interpretation. Just in terms of people watching this and kind of, maybe...
I would say people that do well here are people who can handle living in community. I think that is one of the biggest things. Like, because it's kind of stressful. Like, you think about if you're living in a city or a suburb or somewhere, even in the country, you might not even know your neighbors. You might not know the person who's two doors down. They could be going crazy, having a nervous breakdown. They could be like, committing a crime or something, and you wouldn't even know it. But every little thing when you're living in community is sort of amplified, and it affects everyone in the community. So I think that can create some difficulties. So it definitely takes, like, I've lived in housing cooperatives for a long time, so I sort of know a lot about what I can and can't handle, and I think Dancing Rabbit provides a good balance compared with some other communities, because you can have some privacy, you can have some individuality here and decide how much you want to participate in the community. And I'm sure there are people that live here that, when a crisis happens, they're totally disconnected and don't have to deal with it at all, really. But there's other people that are more invested in the community, and they get sort of dragged into the drama, and happens in other intentional communities, of course, and maybe even more so. I can imagine if you're doing income sharing, it might be even more difficult, because there's so much shared resources and sort of crossover feelings that can be tread on in that kind of a situation. Whereas here, it's up to everyone to make their income however they feel like they can do that. And so I think that's definitely a big part of succeeding here is being able to live with these restrictions. I mean, we're living
This is a
with
demonstration of
like our
Wirecast.
covenants. We've all agreed to follow these covenants, and our covenants, I think they sort of touch on some of the major dependencies of the typical American lifestyle. So like
Yeah.
they're basically covering things that like and they say you can't do those things. So
Right.
so like you think about a personal vehicle, how important is that to all of you and to all the people out there?
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
You know, huge percentage of the world's population get by just fine. I'm sure they would all love a personal vehicle, but they get by just fine without one. But your typical American could not live. They couldn't work. They couldn't do a lot of stuff without their vehicle. You know, people are commuting hours to work. So that's something that just that one thing is such a major impact on how people can live here. And so you have to be able to deal with that, those limitations. And I think a lot of people come here and they don't understand how much of an impact it can be. The thing is, like, once you live in a place like this, like Dancing Rabbit is designed to make it easier to live without these things. So when you can share resources with other people, you can get the collective benefits and increase your standard of living by sharing resources with other people. Like I probably wouldn't be able to buy my own car, my own tractor, my own truck, but I have the use of all those things for a very small amount of money. But it's a limitation in that I can't just go out and use the car whenever I want to, you know.
Right. There's an adjustment for just about everything. But, you know, for me, like all those inconveniences totally aren't an issue when I think about the amount of resources that I'm saving by living this way. You know, I mean, I live a pretty nice lifestyle here. And it's weird to think that I'm living on less than, you know, a quarter of the sort of consumer life that I was living when I was living in Los Angeles, for example. You know, and it just blows my mind because I feel like my quality of life here is really good, especially when I'm cognizant of the fact of all the water I'm saving. You know, yeah, I don't take a shower every day, but I have this pond, this giant, beautiful pond that I can go in anytime. You know, yes, I don't have a kitchen or a bathroom in my house, but, you know, I pay into the use of our common house, which allows me basically a giant, comfortable living room where there's people whose company I enjoy that are sitting there probably stoking the fire in the wintertime that I can go over, and there's a kitchen right there, and I can make a cup of hot cocoa. And so, you know, I have this really high quality of life that looks very different from the life that I had before. And so for me, I don't really necessarily think of them as sacrifices necessarily. I mean, there are times for sure when, you know, like I just want to get out of here and go to a movie by myself, you know, or I just want to like just go because it's a lot. I mean, because we're kind of seeing each other pretty frequently. You know, we're conducting a lot of business together with people who are also our neighbors, who are our friends. You know, so it's flipping the script of what civilization looks like on its head, and doing things just radically differently. And is it better?
This is a demonstration
in terms of resource use? Yeah, I would say so. I would say in terms of our impact on nature and how we build and how we consume is reducing the amount of pollution that we create. That we are,
you're using it. I mean, like we've done the auditing.
Exactly.
And we use a fraction of the resources of the average American. I mean, like 10% or something. So we're really having a huge impact in terms of consumption of fossil fuel and use of resources in general. You know,
this is a demonstration
use like 90% less than the average American household of like fresh drinking water. You know, and one of the ways that we do that is we use a composting toilet system, which is amazing. And in fact, what's so weird for me, like, yeah, some people come here and they're like, oh, it's really weird. But I go back to civilization where I go out into concrete land and I'm really bummed, actually, that I'm forced to pee indoors
And, like, flush your waste down somewhere where it's going to end up like in a lake somewhere, or who knows where it's going to end up.
Exactly.
And instead, like, we're composting all of our human waste, and we can use it to fertilize our fruit trees. I mean, in a couple of years, it's unrecognizable from really beautiful compost, you know.
Right.
So.
And if even if we don't use it as a resource, as a reclaimed resource, we're still not pooping in fresh drinking water, which is what most of the world,
which is crazy.
Developed countries are doing. Taking perfectly fresh water and polluting it with a nutrient.
Is a demonstration of Wirecast.
We just do things just differently. A lot of intentional communities also share some of our practices, but arguably we're one of the most ecologically rigorous of intentional communities, at least in North America. We've actually been told this by people. Not only have we had our friend Brooke, who lives here, who's an anthropologist, did this extensive study on our resource use, but we hear from people all the time who've traveled to all these other villages, to other programs, to other living situations, who say that they're like saving resources, and they're I've heard from many people that we're like seeing, in their opinion, doing better than most of the other kind of situations they've seen in this country.
Yeah,
which is
radical. Yeah. Well, we have the covenants, and a lot of other places don't have a lot of those restrictions. They just allow people to own their own cars and drive them as much as they want. They don't have those.
This is a demonstration of
Totally.
Wirecast.
The other thing that did we get a question?
Yeah, we got a question, so let's honor that because we're not going to stay on here for too much longer.
Okay.
Mike wants to know, is the community wanting to increase membership?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're doing all the time. We originally were created with a mission to have a population of 500 to 1,000 people, and I kind of get sick of saying that to people because it makes it seem like we're falling way short of our goals. We've been around for almost 20 years now, and the thing is, like, I think we just need to tell people that we want to have a village, because I think that it's like, we don't need to say that. We could say, oh, we'd like to have a couple hundred people or something. And then once we get to that point, we can increase it and say we want more people, but it's like, give us something to shoot for that's a little more realistic.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we have houses for sale here. We're recruiting people. We have visitor sessions that happen every year. We have 4 of them this year. We're in the middle of our 3rd one. And so we get people coming here all the time. It's an opportunity for people to check out the village. Those are like 1 to 3 weeks long, those official visitor sessions. You can also do a short-term visit if you want to. If you can find a host here, you can just email Dancing Rabbit, the regular Dancing Rabbit email address, and tell them you're interested in a short-term visit, and then they send out an email and see if somebody wants to host you. You can also stay at the Mercantile, and there's other like Airbnb. People have Airbnb options. So if you want to come for a shorter time, you can't get off work for 1 to 3 weeks, which most people can't. That's a great way to visit and check it out.
We have an open house coming up in the fall. We have Saturday, if you live in the area and can drive here, we have a Saturday tour, which the 2nd and 4th weekend Saturdays of the month. But I want to, so we have lots of opportunities. Go to dancingrabbit.org. All of the information is there. In fact, we're building a new website. Please let us know what you think. It's about to come out, and we're really excited because it's going to be mobile friendly, which we've not had in a long time. And I think like something like 50%, at least 40% of the internet traffic, pretty much globally, is like mobile. Yeah, everybody's looking on their smartphone, right? And we do have really good internet here. And I have a smartphone, and I use it all the time.
We're about to get much better internet. I was just talking to someone about a community. I think it was Alex. He said he had visited a community in New Mexico or something, and they were like opening themselves up to tiny houses, and so they got, apparently like 10 years ago, they got fiber optic phone lines in there, and got internet, really high speed internet. And that attracted all these, professional techies who wanted to live in tiny houses. and now we're just about to get, you know,
High
fiber
speed,
optics, have that option for really high-speed internet here. So who knows if that will attract more? If we can advertise that, that might attract more people.
Right, because that is the sort of person that can live here. I do have a question coming up from Brett that I want to get to, but finishing up the internet thing, it is really amazing because that is ideal. Like if you're trying to live affordably and you can work online, hands down, this is a great situation. If you're concerned about, you know, combating climate change, living low carbon, saving money, and living well, and still doing your job online, we've got really a great lifestyle for you.
And bookmark that thought because I have another thing to say after this.
All right, let's ask Brett a question. Brett wants to know about the children that are born here, feeling how they feel about living in community compared to the adults. Like, do they ever feel like they need to get out and get away, or what do you think?
The kids that are born here, I would say I mean, I don't know if it's just from this being their only experience, but I think it's really amazing to be a kid and grow up here. Like,
totally.
The kids have so much fun. I mean, a lot of them are homeschooled. Some of them do end up going to the public school, you know, during the school year when they're a little bit older, but usually the younger kids are homeschooled. And it's up to them to decide what they want to do. Like one of the kids who's, I think, 9 or 10 this year, went to summer school and he had never been to the local public school before. And he just couldn't stand it. I mean, he couldn't even make it for a week because he didn't like it nearly as much as his life here. And so I think it's, no, aside from it being a much more natural setting, you know, there's a lot of other kids to play with here, and it's just like it's a more fun existence, you know.
It really is. I mean, you know, the kids that have grown up here, or let's say, I mean, there's really only a handful of kids, only a couple kids really, that were born here or moved here from a very early age and then have spent a lot of time growing up here. But I would say, generally speaking, not even this community, but living in community like this, the kids that I've run into that do live here or that live in other villages like this, or other communities I should say like this, are so cool. Like they just, I don't know, I wish, just from seeing the effect that interacting with non-familial adults in a casual setting, how that improves their ability to communicate, how that makes them so much more mature and able to negotiate conflict. Yeah. It's like, hands down,
so much more mature because they're learning from adults around them instead of, you know, you think about kids are sent to public school or to daycare or whatever, and they're mostly learning from their peers who don't have any more knowledge than they do. So here, they're exposed to adults in so many ways, and it's, yeah, I mean, this is typical of kids who live in community anywhere, you know.
And also because we're kind of like aunts and uncles for all of the little kids that run around here, because we see them so frequently that we don't really tolerate. Nobody really is going to take their tantrums and their bad behavior. So we're all, I would say, arguably willing to kind of step in and go, hey, look, what you're doing right now is not cool. I don't appreciate how you're behaving with that other kid. Can you please stop? Which in the concrete world, it's much easier to just go, oh, not my kids, I'm out of here. But here, we don't really have that luxury. We're going to have to see these kids, and, we have a sense of belonging to the kids, I think, in some level. Even if we don't necessarily get along with them immediately, we've got a relationship with their families. So it's a different dynamic, I think, and really a good one. There's another question. Oh, who was it? Brett wanted to do something about in comparison. I don't know. Brett, can you clarify? But you had a footnote. Do you want to go back to that?
Yeah. What was it?
The internet and high-speed stuff and moving here.
Of Wirecast.
Can you help us remember what we were just talking about, please?
Was it the previous question that we were?
Well, we were talking about the adults versus the kids. But that was the question that I interrupted.
Oh, I think it had to do with economics, and I'm trying to think of what that was that I wanted to elaborate on.
Right.
But I think I I lost it now.
You know, there are a really weird and amazing number of jobs that have come
This is a
online as
demonstration
things
of
get, you know,
Wirecast.
computerized. I mean, people are doing transcription jobs here. There have been some people who have done.
You're kind of triggering. I got the thing.
Oh, okay, cool.
What I was going to say.
Awesome.
Go ahead and continue, and hopefully I'll be able to
All right, good.
remember it.
Hang on.
But it has to do with the internet
Okay.
jobs. Yeah.
Well, then you can extend what I'm talking about, which is basically, you know, it's really neat and interesting how many different types of jobs there are online. There's another community that we have a relationship with that does a thing where they basically get books and they do indexes for publishers for books, and it's something that the community does all online. There are people who have done virtual assistant work here. There is, you know, we have one gentleman, Nathan, who does online marketing here really successfully. He makes a really great income, basically just working over a computer. We have a couple folks that do coaching. They do life coaching, parent coaching over the internet. They consult via Skype, over telephone, over email, and all of that, and really add value to people's lives just using a computer. And so it's amazing, you know. And in my case, like with Ray and I, what we do, one of the things that we do for money is we produce videos for folks, sometimes regionally, sometimes people outside the area, and we also do voiceover work, which is basically computer-based. You know, someone sends us a script, we read it, and put music underneath it. So it's, you know, there are a lot of interesting solutions, and I think the number of opportunities to make money online are only increasing.
Yeah. And what I was going to say that I had forgotten was I see like the progression of our economy as being like, if we can get enough people here, the more people we can get here, the more we can have a self-sufficient, self-sustaining economy. But in these early stages, it's kind of key that we have these opportunities online. I mean, I think about an online job and I'm like, that is not my ideal for what is sustainable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want us all, like, my idea of a sustainable economy is not everybody working online. Mm-hmm. It's people like working on the land, producing things that are real and simplifying their lives, not complicated technology. And so, but I think those kind of jobs are really necessary in these early stages until we can get enough people here that those people can then support other people who want to grow food or want to produce something else here, or provide some like medical service or something, whatever it is. And, you know, the more people that we have here, the more potential there is to have a self-sustaining economy. And so it's really why we want more people here.
For sure, especially to supply services and to create more jobs and to just help everybody out. Yeah, it's interesting. So there's another question from, what causes someone to be asked to leave the community? What are the deal breakers?
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
It's only happened a couple of times that I've ever heard of, and it usually has to do with like some major conflict, like conflict with many people, like dishonesty, like
debt,
exactly.
Accumulating, borrowing money from members and then not paying it back.
Yeah, and like there's also like there was a person who lived here a long time ago, and just in the decision-making process back when we have a village council now, so we elect a small group of people, and actually I'm one of the village councilors, but we elect a small group of people to make most of the community decisions. And we used to, before a few years ago, we had a general membership decision-making process, and so everybody in the village that was a member could say no to any kind of proposal that was made. It was consensus by the entire group. And many years ago, there was one person who was just very difficult and always opposing a lot of proposals that went, and so nothing could really, everything was just gridlocked because of one person. Mm-hmm. And I think that was just a struggle for the rest of the community, and they had to ask the person to leave. Mm-hmm. So those are the major things. I mean, there's, you know, the typical things that you might might think. Like, I guess we have had people that weren't necessarily members, or that
This
you
is
know,
a demonstration of
that for
Wirecast.
whatever reason, like they had a breakdown or something, and so
Mm-hmm.
mental illness can sometimes be a factor in somebody either just not being able to stay here, you know.
Right, because like one of the things that's painfully aware here is that because we are remotely out in the country here, that the local hospital does not have a lot of services that some people at times have found really important, like mental health.
This is a
It's
demonstration
not
of
something that's really well supported
Wirecast.
out here. You have to go pretty far to get consistent, reliable mental health help. So anyway, here we have one more question here, and it's in regards to the someone asks, is the new common house built yet? Well, we did have a building plan, but I want to hear your expanded explanation of it, but I'm gonna put a little dot on it and say that we did have planned a very large community building, but I think, in my view,
This
it
is a
didn't happen and is
demonstration
not
of
happening right now
Wirecast.
because our population did not expand in the trajectory that the building was sort of built for. So it was a mismatch between population and the demands that the building put on the community. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a big project for the community, and some people were really in favor of it, and some people were not they thought it was kind of a risky thing.
This
And
is a
so
demonstration of
we ended up
Wirecast.
doing a feasibility study and found that we just weren't in the position, like as far as fundraising, to be able to raise enough money to pay for this building. And so our nonprofit, we've been putting more effort into building that sort of fundraising, like a donor base and people that are interested in Dancing Rabbit enough to give to us to help. And we're not like, it's a lot of it's loans. I mean, we would want to pay back the money. We're not asking for a donation necessarily, but part of the building would serve our nonprofit, which is entirely, its mission is education. So anyways, that's sort of, it's kind of on hold now, and it's uncertain. I'm sure that in the future we will need a new common house, and especially if our population grows, we'll need a new common house of some sort, and
This is a
we'll have to
demonstration of
plan,
Wirecast.
a building that's suited to our capacity for fundraising and our capacity to, as a village, to pay off something like this. We have to think about the fact that a lot of people here don't make a lot of money, and so spending a lot of money for a building, like millions of dollars, might not be something that we can really foot ourselves, unless we have an incredible number of people here,
right?
Pitching in. So.
Yeah, but I think that as we grow, for
This
sure,
is a
some other
demonstration of
facilities
Wirecast.
will be needed. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Because right now our common house is suitably sized. We have enough housing even for people in the winter that want to stay here. Last winter, we had a couple spare rental rooms. Yeah. So it's a really great time if you're interested in coming and checking this out. This year is I don't know about y'all, but it's never been more relevant to try to live ecologically, given the news about climate change and where we are at politically and economically in this country. At no time could what we're doing be more appropriate, in my opinion. The more I realize how messed up I'm seeing, the world, the more it reinforces my life here. Sounds like you feel the same way.
Yeah, and even if you don't think you can live in a place like Dancing Rabbit, or you wouldn't want to live this way, like, do something in your life. Like, think about how much it would cost to invest in those solar panels, and actually the government has some pretty good programs for getting credit for investing in renewable energy. So it's actually really incredibly affordable, and could potentially even save you money on your utilities over time, because most people don't think of the fact that, like, when you're paying towards a utility that burns coal and gives you electricity, you don't think about like the payback time. There is no payback time. You don't ever get paid back for the money that you give into something like that. But with solar panels,
This
they
is a
pay for
demonstration of
themselves over time.
Wirecast.
Right? So you end up not paying anything for them,
Right.
for them because you save money in the energy that you get that's free once you have the panels. You know?
For sure.
So yeah, I would recommend like do whatever you can. Like think it may seem like a huge investment, but get a loan. Look into a loan from the government or whatever. They're available, and then you can get a tax break. If you have a regular paying job, you can get a significant tax break from getting renewables installed in your house.
This is
Totally.
a
You don't have to move to
demonstration
Dancing
of
Rabbit to live
Wirecast.
really ecologically, you know. Even, I mean, I like to think of this place as like low carbon living boot camp, you know, sustainability boot camp. This is a great place to come and immerse in what that looks like, how actually comfortable it can be to not have a bathroom or a kitchen in your house and share that infrastructure with other people. How nice it can actually be to ride your bike everywhere and not own a car privately,
This is
or
a
when you do need a
demonstration
car,
of
you have a
Wirecast.
zip car, for example, a program like that, which is what we have, like a cooperative car sharing program. How comfortable that can be, and see what that's like, so then you can go back to your own town and apply some of the inspiration that we hopefully provide for the people that come and check us out, because we do that. And in many ways, I've even heard some people say that we have achieved our mission, that we have grown to a village of thousands because of all of the people who have come here,
This is a
gotten turned on,
demonstration of
excited about living low
Wirecast.
carbon, and then gone to their part of the world to do it. We're a decentralized village.
Yeah, they lived here even for a little
Yeah,
while, or
exactly.
for a long time, and then went on somewhere else and still practice what they practiced here.
Totally. So let's do one last question. This
Okay.
is from Billy. At what age does a person practically age out of what is reasonable to live at Dancing Rabbit? Presumably as someone gets older, maybe, Billy, your question is. I think we're going to answer it in that context. What do you think?
This is a
It's
demonstration
hard to say
of
because we have people
Wirecast.
here of all different ages, and there's people in their 60s, you know, that just moved here. I think, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, say late 60s.
Yeah, late 60s. So
Mhm.
I think it's definitely an option for people of any age, and maybe in the wintertime it can be a little bit, you have to be careful because we don't have roads and we don't salt them. I mean, we have gravel roads and paths, but that's like, I
This
think
is
the
a
biggest concern, but
demonstration
it
of
doesn't matter what age
Wirecast.
you are, like that's
Right.
always a scary thing walking around here when everything's slick with ice.
Yeah.
So that's like the big factor. I don't know. I think it would be a better question for the people who are older that live here, how they see their future happening. But I mean, I think one of the great benefits of moving here is that, and we just recently had an experience of this, is like having
This
a
is a
community of
demonstration
people
of
who can help you
Wirecast.
when you're struggling with your health or whatever problem you might be having. We just had a community member who had cancer, and the entire, you know, like many people in the village, like set aside their everyday lives and helped this person, these people, to deal with that illness, you know. So
yeah, it's a good, you know, circumstance to
This
be,
is a demonstration
you
of
know,
Wirecast.
in light of the situation. I think it was a really beautiful way to have to deal with that phase of life. I think it was a very kind of hopeful experience, and even though that member, you know, recently died, I think it really had it was a unifying experience, and we got to sort of participate and celebrate this person's life, which was very different, I think, from how
This
it
is a
may have gone
demonstration of
had,
Wirecast.
for instance, this particular family decided to just stay in the city. You know, that experience with cancer and ultimately death would have been a very, very different experience. Right? It was life affirming doing that part of life here. You know, so.
Yeah, and I think it was like an experience that seeing people come together impressed a lot of people in the village about like the power of community and what you can accomplish when you
This is
get
a
together,
demonstration
like,
of Wirecast.
it kind of makes me think of how maybe our culture used to be when you know there was a lot more community in it.
Yeah.
You know, when people lived close together and they didn't have so many distractions, and they were willing to, they knew their neighbors and they were helpful to them, and you know, wanted to help them in their lives, you know, when they needed it. And like, I think that's what often happens here in community, is like somebody's struggling and they need help, and other people step in
This
to do
is
it,
a
even though they
demonstration
might
of
have other
Wirecast.
commitments in their lives. They set time aside and do it, you know.
Yep. Well, great. I think that's it. We're going to call it. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really fun. Dan, thanks for doing this with me. Maybe you'd be willing to join again and
yeah, definitely
field some questions. Great questions, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I think this should be available through the Facebook page to just replay this. Bookmark it on YouTube if you
This is a demonstration
look at
of
it later.
Wirecast.
But yeah.
So does this show up on the YouTube channel for Dancing Rabbit, or for
right now it's on ours. We're going to launch it, I think, officially through the Dancing Rabbit page. This is sort of like a pilot to see if there's people that are interested in this, and clearly the answer is yes. So I think we're going to make this an official outreach program. So tune in for more later. Thank you so much. Please tell your friends about it if they want to find out about community, low carbon living, climate change, online working, all sorts of different stuff. We know a lot. We're happy to share it. We love talking about this stuff. So we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
See ya.